The objectives of the lesson are: number one, to define demand and supply. Of course, in the lesson, I'm going to tell you what is demand and what is supply. Number two, to state the law of demand and supply and explain them. Of course, we have law of demand different from the law of supply. I'm going to tell you what is the law of demand and what is the law of supply in the lesson. Of course, because buyers and sellers, they normally react to price in a particular way. And that is why a law is developed or can be developed from that behavior. Alright, number three, to explain how demand and supply affect the price of goods. Of course, when you have persons wanting to buy a good, what will happen is that the seller can change the price. So if buyers want a good a lot, what will happen? The supplier can raise the price. But if consumers don't want a particular good, then the suppliers, they have to lower the price. I'll explain more in the lesson. Alright, number four, to explain demand and supply schedule and curve. Of course, the demand for a goods, you have many persons demanding a goods normally. So what will happen, you can tabulate all of those demands in a table. And of course, we call that the demand schedule. If you're going to tabulate all the supply of a particular good of all the supplier in a table, we call that the supply schedule. And of course, the demand, when you plot those information on a graph, we get a line. So when you plot all the demand on a graph, we get a line, we call that the demand curve. Same for supply. When we plot all that information in a graph, we get a specific line, so we call that the supply curve. Objective number five, last but not least, to explain equilibrium price. Equilibrium price is when the market is stable. There is no oversupply of goods or shortage of goods. Now this is when the market is stable. Demand is the amount of goods, which we call quantity, that is bought at a given price at a given period of time. What this is saying is that the amount of goods that buyers will buy will depend on the price of that goods. So for example, in the Aki season, you know that there's a lot of Aki. So more likely there will be an oversupply of Aki in the Aki season. If for instance the price is selling at $50, one individual might buy 3 dozens. However, as the Aki season fade out and start to get scarce, the price may go up. So say for example the price goes up to $100. That consumer might start buying 1 dozen instead of 3 dozen. So let us look at that example again. When Aki is at $50, the consumer may purchase 3 dozen. Now when the price moves up to $100, that consumer may buy 1 dozen. So if you notice from this example, when the price is low, consumers buy more. And when the price is high, consumer will buy less. So that is what is demand. The amount of goods that a consumer will buy will be based on the price. And of course, when the definition speaks about period of time, it is telling you that the demand for a particular good can change at any time. Alright, so in the definition, we have 3 main key terms. 1 is the quantity of the goods, 2 is the price of the goods, and 3, the period of time. So whenever you're writing a definition, or if you're reading for the definition of demand, you should always see these 3 components coming out in the definition. Of course, quantity is the amount of goods. Price is the amount that is given in exchange for a good. So of course, the amount of money for the goods will be the price, since we are using money now. And of course, period of time, it could be 3 months, 2 months, etc. Supply is the amount of goods, which we call quantity, that is put on the market at a given price at a given period of time. So what that is basically saying is that a seller will normally or will be motivated to sell if the price is in their favor. So if the price is high, a supplier will want to put more goods on the market because they want to fetch that high price to make a bigger money. But if the price is low for goods, they may not be eager to supply a lot of goods on the market because they will not make a lot of profit. Say for example, lettuce. Say for example, the selling price for lettuce is $60. The supplier may want to supply the regular amount, say 50 pounds per week. When the price for lettuce is at the selling price is $60, the suppliers may want to supply 50 pounds per week. But however, say the selling price for lettuce goes up to about $100. The suppliers may get motivated because they might be saying, no, I can make a lot of money. So what they will be eager to do is to supply maybe double amount that they want to supply. So they will try their best to produce and try to supply more lettuce. Say for example, they may want to supply 100 pounds per week. Based on this example, you can see that when the selling price is low, the seller may just want to supply the regular amount of goods. However, if the price of goods go up, the supplier may want to supply more of that goods on the market because their intention is to make money. So that is the psychology of the seller. Let us look at the key terms in the definition. So quantity, as I just explained, when price is low, suppliers want to sell less. When selling price is high, suppliers want to sell more. In the period of time, supply for our goods can change at any time. Key point number 1. The psychology of the buyer is that when selling price for goods is low, they will buy more of that good. And when selling price for goods is high, they will buy less. Number 2. The psychology of the seller is that when price is low, the seller don't want to sell or supply a lot of that goods. However, if the price for goods is high, the seller or suppliers would want to sell more of that good. Number 3. Demand is opposite of supply and vice versa. What that is saying is that the behaviors of the buyers is opposite of the behaviors of the seller. The law of demand states that the lower the price of goods, we're talking about the selling price, not the cost price, the more of those goods will buyers or consumers buy or demand. So let me repeat. It states that the lower the price of goods, the more of that goods consumers will buy. That's what it is basically saying. And of course, you need to remember that the price we are talking about is the selling price of the goods, not the cost price. Of course, the opposite is also true. When price is high for goods, consumers are not motivated to purchase a lot. Of course, they will not purchase a lot of them. Alright, let's move to the law of supply. The law of supply states that the lower the price of goods, the seller will supply less of those goods. On the other hand, what it's also saying is that when the price of goods is high, the supplier will supply more of the goods. So the law of supply is written from the seller's perspective. So the seller always tries to maximize profit. So if the selling price is low, the seller or supplier will not want to supply a lot of that goods because they will not make a lot of money. However, if the selling price goes up on a good or for goods, they will intend to supply more of those goods because they want to fetch a higher price or to make more money. Alright, so of course you need to also understand that the price we are talking about is the selling price. So when you're speaking about demand and supply, we are really speaking about the selling price, not the cost price, okay? Selling price. Previously, we looked at how price may affect demand and supply for goods. However, what we're going to do now, we're going to look how demand and supply affect the pricing of goods. So the question is, how does demand affect price of goods? There are two possible ways. One, if the demand for a good is high, its price will go up. So if persons want to buy a good and the demand, a lot of them want to buy a particular good, then the price of that good will eventually go up. And I'll explain that further. On the other hand, if the demand for a good is low, that means if people don't really want to buy that goods, or if people are not buying that goods a lot, they don't really want it a lot, then eventually the price for it will go down. Alright, we look at that further as well. So we're going to look at a number of scenarios or examples to explain the theory about. Scenario 1. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, your country refused to import flour because they want to lower the spread of COVID-19. And as a result, there is a rapid increase in the demand for green banana. What will eventually happen to the price of banana? So what this scenario is saying is that the government don't want COVID-19 to come into the country or to spread worse. So what they do is to stop the importation of flour. As a result, because the local people cannot get flour, they start to turn to other starch foods like green banana in this situation, which is a local food. Eventually, if the demand for the banana go up, what will happen over a period of time? There are two main things that may happen. One, there will be more buyers of the banana than how fast the bananas are produced. So that will establish in the market. Now, number two is that the sellers will realize that the demand for banana is very high, and if they raise the price, the buyers will still buy the banana. So what will eventually happen is that the sellers or the producers will raise their selling price, because if they raise it, the buyers will still buy it because demand for it is very high. So in other words, you will have a shortage of the banana over a period of time, and because of that, the sellers will take advantage of the situation and raise the price. Scenario number 2. If after a period of 3 months, the government started the re-importation of flour and the demand for green banana lowers, what will happen to the price of banana? Now, what will eventually happen is that the price of the banana will go down because demand for the banana go down. Now, the sellers will realize that they will have more goods than what the buyers are willing to buy. Now, when they realize that they will have more goods and some of those banana will not sell, in order to get them to sell, they will lower the price of the banana in order to get them to sell. What will also happen is that there will be a surplus of banana on the market. What those sellers can also do to deal with a problem like that, when there's a surplus, the sellers can ensure that they sell them to the factory. If they have a lot, they can start selling them to the factory at a very low price, of course, and so they will make a little extra money on that. But eventually, if the demand go down, if consumers don't want a lot of banana, then the seller will basically lower the price in order to get them to purchase the banana. They don't want to have the banana and the banana spoil. And as I said earlier, when there's a surplus of a good on the market, say for example like coffee, when it's coffee season or when it's breadfruit season or pear season, what will happen? You will have an excess of those goods on the market. What can the seller do to those excess goods? They can sell them to the manufacturer, where those goods can be processed and sell later. Also, what they will do also is to lower the price of the goods in order to get more of them to sell. So their aim is not to fetch a high price in that situation. Because of the demand, their aim is to lower the price of the goods. Let us now look at how supply affect the price of goods. So let us recap a little. As we said earlier or previously, we look at how price affect demand and supply, and then after that we looked at how demand affect price. Now we are going to look at how supply affect price of goods. Now it affected it in two ways. One, if there is an oversupply of goods, which we normally refer to as surplus, the selling price will go down. So when there is an oversupply of goods on the market, and when there is an oversupply, it means that there's more goods put on the market than the demand for it. If there is an oversupply of goods, which we call surplus, then the selling price of that good will go down. Alright, surplus means that there is a lot of goods on the market compared to how it is demanded. So the supply is greater than the demand. So that is what gives you a surplus, when the supply of a good is greater than the demand of the goods. On the other hand, if there is an undersupply of goods, which we call shortage, the selling price of the good will eventually go up. Shortage is when the demand for a good is greater than the supply of the good. Let's look at these situations in scenarios. So we're going to move to scenario number 3. If on the market there is an oversupply of chicken meat, which we call surplus, because of the closure of schools and restaurants due to the COVID-19 pandemic, what will happen to the price of chicken meat? So what this is saying, because of COVID-19 pandemic, restaurants and schools closed, they were still producing, but because of the sudden closure of schools and restaurants, what happened? They have a lot of chicken meat available for sale and they don't have a market. So what you have happening now is that you have a surplus. There's more chicken on the market than how it is demanded currently. What will eventually happen is that the price of chicken meat will go down because you have too much chicken meat on the market than how it is demanded. And if those sellers don't get rid of those chicken meats, they will lose all their money because they would have to either store it, and what will happen, their electricity bill will go up and they will not really have a cash flow. So what will happen, to get them sell, they have to lower their price because competition among the sellers of chicken meat increases. There's a strict competition right now. So if, for example, if one seller is selling chicken meat for $175, another seller might sell it for $170. The buyer will buy from those who are selling it for $170 because the buyer realized that everybody wants to sell him chicken meat, so he will take the lower price. Alright, so eventually when there is an oversupply of a good, or in this case the chicken meat, then the selling price of that goods will go down. Scenario number 4. If there is an undersupply of face masks and tissues due to the COVID-19 pandemic, how will this situation eventually affect price? Now basically, how will it affect price when there's an undersupply of goods overall? Is that price will go up for that goods. So in this case, where you see the face mask and the tissue, there's a shortage of that, it means there's an undersupply of them on the market. So what will happen is that eventually price will go up for the face mask. And the reason is because there's a shortage of the face masks and the tissues. Buyers are demanding them a lot. And what will happen? The supplier will realize that there's a high demand for the masks and tissues, and so they will raise the price. They know that the demand will still be high. Consumers will still purchase those masks and tissues at a high price because there's a high demand for those goods. So the seller's intention is always to fetch a high price. So if they raise the price, or if they notice that when they raise the price, consumers will still purchase those items, then they will continue to raise the price. And undersupply always results in that situation because there is more demand for the goods, or in this case, there's a more demand for the face masks and the tissues than how they are on the market. So once demand is high for goods, sellers will raise price. Price will go for those goods. The demand schedule. The demand schedule for a product is the sum of all the individual consumers' demands tabulated to show the relationship between the quantities of the product demanded at various prices. In short, the demand schedule is the tabulation of all the demands of a product. So for example, hockey, as we have in the table there. The demand schedule for hockey is the sum of all the consumers' demand for the hockey over a period of time. And of course, when we're talking about demand, as we said before, it is the amount of goods that consumers buy at various prices. Alright? So remember now that demand is written from the perspective of the buyer, the consumer. So in the demand schedule, there will be a tabulation of all the demands for a particular product. In other words, we will look at the quantities of a product that is demanded at various prices. So let us look at the example in this table over here. As you can see, the title of the table, it says the demand for hockey over a 3 months period. On this column we have the price, on this column we have quantity. So we'll look at the relationship when the price for Aki was at $50, the quantity demanded was 6 dozen Akis. When it moves to $70, we see that the amount demanded was 4 dozen Akis at $70. When the price goes up to $100, the quantity demanded is 2 dozen Akis. When price goes up to $150, the amount that is demanded is 1 dozen. Alright, so this is basically the table is showing the relationship of all the demands at various prices and quantity. What you can see, the relationship that is shown here based on the law of demand, as you can see, as price go up, the quantity demanded goes down. So when price is low, consumers will buy more of the goods. When price is high, they will buy less. But remember now that the schedule show all the demand for one good in a table. Say for example, 10,000 persons buying Aki in Highgate or in Kingston. They will put all those 10,000 buyers demand, how they react to the prices, in a table. That's what it is saying. And in this case for 3 months. So this is done for 3 months. So it's basically putting all the demands in a table, tabulating that information in a table. And that is what is called a demand schedule. The supply schedule. The supply schedule for a product is the sum of all the individual sellers tabulated to show the relationship between the quantity offered for sale at different prices. So what that is saying, in short, the supply schedule, it is saying that it is the amount of supply of a goods that is tabulated. So all the sellers of a particular goods, say for example Aki, so we're looking at the supply schedule of Aki in Jamaica. And we have 10,000 persons selling Aki. Then all that information based on the amount that they will put on the market, which we call quantity, as it regards to price, or price affect the amount that they will put, and that information, all that information of all those suppliers are tabulated. That tabulation of all the information is called the supply schedule. Now let us look at an example in the supply schedule in this table. Alright, so the table title, the supply of Aki over a 3 months period. So in this column, we have the price, and this column, we have the quantity. So Aki, when Aki is at $50, we're talking about the selling price. So when Aki is at $50, the quantity that the sellers are willing to put on the market is 3 dozen. When the Aki is at $70, the sellers are willing to put out 5 dozen. When price goes up to $100 per dozen, the suppliers are willing to put out 8 dozen. When the price goes up to $150, the sellers are willing to put out 10 dozen Akis. So the relationship is showing you here is that when the price of Aki is low, the sellers, they are willing to put out less. But as price goes up, the sellers, they are willing to put out more. So that is what the relationship of a supply schedule will always show you. Or that is what it has shown over a period of years now. So as you can see now, the comparison between the demand schedule and the supply schedule is that in the demand schedule, the relationship will be that when price is low, the buyers will buy more of the goods. But on the other hand, when the price is low, suppliers will supply less. But as price goes up for that good that they are supplying, then they are willing to put out more on the market. Alright, the demand curve. The demand curve is a line that is formed when all the demands for a good is plotted on a graph. So of course, normally the information that you plot on the graph we have over here, that information is normally taken from a demand schedule. So when a demand schedule is collected, that information can be put on a graph. And that is what, when you plot all that information, you get a line. Now that line is called the demand curve, and I'll show you the example over here. However, some key points that you need to know is that when you're plotting demand on a graph or supply on a graph, on the y-axis, which is the vertical lines, you'll have the price. On the horizontal line, you'll always have the quantity. So you have to remember that you will not or will never ever put quantity on the vertical line. Price will always be on the vertical line or the y-axis, and quantity will be on the x-axis. So let us continue. Now I'm going to put the information from the demand schedule that we did earlier in this graph. So if you notice the units, the dollars, I go by $20 each. So that's why I get 20, 50, 60, 80, 100, 120, 140, 160. So as you can see, between the 20 and the 40 equally, you'll have 30 right here. So 40, then you have 50 right here, then 60, then 70 right here. So when you're putting together your graph, you have to look at the information that you have in the demand schedule first, then you will know how much to go up by. So let us look, let me point out exactly what I'm saying now. So you're going to plot the points on the graph. So here, when the price is at $50, you draw a line, go right across. The quantity demanded is 6 dozen. So you draw the line right over to meet the line at 6. So the point that they meet at 6 is right here. So we use that X to show you that point. To the second one, when the price goes up to $70, which is right here, you draw the line right across. The amount that is demanded is 4 dozen. So you go up with the line here. Go up and you go across with the $70 here. On the point that they meet, you put that X here. So right here, when the price goes up to $100, you draw a line across here. And then you see that the amount demanded was 2 dozen at that price. So you draw a line up, straight up on the point where they meet, you put that X. And when the price here is at $150, the amount that the consumer buy was 1 dozen. So remember that this information is coming from the demand schedule that we looked at earlier. Now, I'm going to connect all those X's or points. Alright, so if you notice, you get the curve going this way. You get the line going this way. And this now, what you have here, is called the demand curve. And please note that when the line turns this way or runs this way, there's a reason why the demand curve will always run this way. So whenever you look at a diagram that says demand curve, you notice it will always go in this direction. And the reason why it goes in this direction is because when price is low, the consumer will always buy more. So because of the principle or the law. So remember, the law of demand states that when price is low, the consumer will buy more. So whenever you plot information based on that principle, you'll always get the curve going this way. The supply curve is a line that is formed when all the supplies for a good is plotted on a graph. And please note that the information that is always plotted on a graph, that information is normally taken from the supply schedule. So that's one of the purposes of the supply schedule. Provide the information that you can also plot on a graph where you can analyze the information. Just please remember now that on the y-axis, which is the vertical line on the graph, you'll have your price. In this case, we're using $. And also on the horizontal line, you'll have your quantity. And we're going to look at an example for the supply of ackee, which we already looked at previously from the supply schedule. So we'll use that information and we are going to plot in this graph to show you the supply curve. From that graph, it was shown that when the price was at $50, the suppliers were willing to supply 3 dozen ackees. So I'm going to plot. So you go across from the $50 straight across. So that the 3 dozen point, and then you go up. And where the lines meet, put an X there. Now, it was also shown that when the price for ackee went up to $70, the amount that was willing to be put on the market was 5 dozen. So you go across until to meet this point. So you go up, and where the points meet, put an X. Now, when the price went up to $100, the supplied amount was 8 dozen. So you follow the same procedure. You go across, come up at the 8 line, the $8 dozen line, and where they meet, you put an X. When the price went up to $150, the suppliers were willing to put 10 dozen ackees on the market. You go across, come up, and where the lines meet, we put an X. So what we'll do now is to plot or to draw a line to connect these X's. Now this line that you get is called your supply curve. And please note that it doesn't necessarily mean it has to be smooth or neat. It can have different shapes. But once it runs in this direction, so as you can see now, The supply curve, it runs in this direction, this way. They always run this way based on the law of supply, that when price is low, the amount supplied will be low. When price is high, suppliers are willing to put more of that good on the market. So the supply curve is always this way. It doesn't have to be a smooth curve, it could be a zigzag curve once it's running this way. So whenever you look at a graph of a supply curve, you see it running in this direction, and that is as a result of the supply, the law of supply. The equilibrium price is the price where the quantity demanded is equal to the quantity supplied. Note brief, at this price, there is no oversupply of goods or undersupply of goods. So let us show the example on a graph. Now here the graph shows the demand and supply of ackee over a period of time. Now as you can see, the price is on the y-axis and the quantity is on the x-axis. At all times it should be written like that. Alright. The demand curve is labeled D to D. So from here to here is the demand curve. And this curve, the supply curve, is labeled S. So from here to S is the supply curve. Now the equilibrium price is located here. So where supply and the demand curve meet, which is here, if you trace the line back to the price line, this is showing you that the equilibrium price is $15. Now the equilibrium quantity is 6 dozen ackees. So what this is telling you now is that if you should go to any other price, there will either be an oversupply of goods or undersupply of goods. Let me illustrate. Say for example, you're looking at the price at $20. Trace the line. You notice here it tells you the quantity demanded. So we go down from the demand curve and it shows you that it's about 4.1 dozen ackees that is demanded. But let's just look at the amount that is supplied at this price, at the $20 price. We continue with the line right across to the supply line. And this will tell you now that is about 7.5 dozen ackees is supplied at the $20 mark. So what it's telling you, the amount demanded would be 4, and the amount supplied, or the amount that is supplied at this price, is 7.5 dozen. So what this is showing you is that the supplied amount is greater than the demand amount. So this price, anything above, will show you an oversupply of goods. So as you can see, the amount supplied is greater than the amount demanded. So I'm going to show you what happens when the price goes below the equilibrium price. You get an undersupply. So let us look at the demand and supply for ackee when the price is at $10. So we're going to trace $10. So if you notice the amount, we hit the supply line. So let us trace to see how much the sellers are willing to sell. Supply at that price. 2 3/4 dozen ackees is supplied at that price. Now let us continue the line to the demand curve to see the amount that is demanded. Hit the line and go down to. So the amount that is demanded is 7 3/4 dozen ackees. So what is telling you, the amount demanded is greater than the amount that was supplied. So that is showing you an undersupply of goods. Alright, so let us go back now to the equilibrium price. The equilibrium price is that one price where the amount supplied is equal to the amount demanded. So at the equilibrium price, the importance of it shows you the price that keeps the market stable. Meaning there's no oversupply of goods where the seller will lose money, and there's no undersupply of goods whereby the consumers or buyers will have to pay high prices. The equilibrium price shows you that no one will lose in this market at that price. Okay, the demand curve can actually shift. Alright, it can move to the right or it can shift to the left. What can cause the demand curve to shift to the left or to the right? Now, I'm going to show you, we'll look at two factors that can actually cause the demand curve to shift. One, you have the income of consumers, and two, tax. So when you're looking at the shift of the actual demand curve, you would not use price. Say price is fixed for the goods, so price would not change. What can cause demand to change other than price? That is what it is basically saying. So let me demonstrate to you how the demand curve shift and how these factors can cause it to shift. Alright. So normally, say this is a demand curve. Of course, remember that price is on the y-axis and quantities on the x-axis, and the demand curve always turn this way. Right? It always runs in this direction. So normally, economists normally label the demand curve D, the normal demand curve or the original demand curve D. Now, it can shift, the demand curve can shift to the right, and you can label that D1, or you can shift to the left. You label that D2. Let me explain to you now what can cause, or how these factors over here can cause the demand curve to shift. If the demand curve shifts to the right, it means demand increases. So this way, right, means demand increase. When you go to the left, it means that demand decreases. Let me show you what can cause the demand curve to shift to the right. What can cause it to increase? Now, what can cause it to increase is the income of the consumers. Now, if consumers' pay increase, for example, teachers, doctors, nurses, if their pay increase, or any worker at all, if their pay increase, what will happen is that they will have more money in hand to purchase more goods. So normally when people have more money, or consumers have more money, they will purchase more goods. I'm going to show you how you read that on the graph. So let me erase this part. Say price for lettuce is $100, right? Let's check to see how much consumers are purchasing. Say, let's do this in pounds. So 1 pound, 2 pounds, 3 pounds, 4 pounds, 5 pounds. Alright, let's use that for example. So say at $100, consumers are purchasing 2 pounds of lettuce. Now say there's an increase in their pay. So nurses, doctors, teachers, everybody in our world, not just government workers, but everybody, say they get a raise in their salary, right? What will happen is that it will cause demand to increase. So let me illustrate that now. Say the price remain at $100. You go over to the new demand curve. Let's see how much they will start purchasing because of the increase. So they might, so this graph is telling you that they start purchasing 4 pounds. Why? Because they have extra money. Alright, so when the curve shifts to the right, it shows an increase in demand. Alright, on the other hand, if the opposite happens, which is tax, remember though that tax is an expense to the worker. So if the government increase tax on goods, on toiletry, or any material that people use, once tax is added to those items, right? Pension, etc. Once those persons have to pay tax, what will mean is that your take-home income will go down. So when goods are taxed, people will leave with less money to spend, and what will happen is that they will purchase less items. So of course, in that case, you will have a new demand curve. So because they have less money to spend because of tax, the demand curve will shift to the left. Of course, as I said, you label this D2. Economists normally label this as D2 and it shift to the left. Anyways, let's continue. So as I said, let's check back the original demand. So when the price is at $100, the consumers was purchasing 2 pounds of lettuce. Now, if they have less income, let us check at the same price how much they will start purchasing. So they will purchase about 1.2 pounds. Alright, so they purchase less. So that is what the graph is showing you. Once there's a tax, once there's an increase in tax on items, the demand curve can shift to the left, meaning the demand decreases. And note that the price remains same. While the price remains same, demand decrease. On the other hand, if consumers get a raise in salary, right, what will happen is that demand curve can shift, will normally shift to the right, meaning they will start purchasing more goods, even though the price remains at $100 for the good. So in this case, this is not the law of demand. The law of demand, please note that the law of demand refers to the change in price of goods that normally affect the buyer. The law of demand refers to the quantity purchased based on price change. But please note that the shift, we're not talking about change in price now, not the law of demand we're talking about. Please note, okay? Can the supply curve shift? Yes, the supply curve can shift. And I have 3 factors on the board that can cause the supply curve to shift. Number 1, we have subsidy. Number 2, factor cost of production. Number 3, techniques of production. Alright, so those 3 factors can cause the supply curve to shift. So of course, when the supply curve shifts, if it shifts to the right, so you label that S1, and please remember how you label them. So of course, if you shift to the right, you will have an increase in supply. So once you're going right, you'll have an increase, right? When you're going to the left, you'll have a decrease. Good? So you're going this way. Supply curve, you actually have a decrease in supply. And I'm going to illustrate using examples, showing you on the graph that when the curve moves to the right, there's an increase in supply. When it moves to the left, there's a decrease in supply. So I'm going to show you that example. Let's look at subsidy. Now, subsidy is a grant that the government can give to producers. So farmers, they can actually give farmers money directly in order to help them to produce more goods. So what will happen, when they get more money they can purchase more goods, so they spend less of their own money. What will happen afterwards is that because they can produce more goods, they can be able to supply more goods on the market. So when farmers are given subsidy, they will have an increase in production. So if the government wants to have increase in production of goods or certain produce, say cabbage or lettuce, what the government has to do is to just subsidize the farmers who produce lettuce or the cabbage. Okay? Alright, so it's a grant. So normally when producers or farmers are given subsidy, which is money directly to purchase inputs, then you will have an increase in supply. Alright, so you'll have the curve moving that way to S1, from S to S1. Alright, so for example, let me show you the example that when the curve move to the right, there's an increase in supply. So say the government subsidize corn. Corn is selling at $15. normally, let's look at the amount that the suppliers were supplying or putting on the market. They were putting about 2.9 pounds of 2.9 dozen corns on the market. Since we're doing corns. Now, if the corn is subsidized, because why the government can subsidize corn, maybe you say that, okay, we want to make our own, we don't want to import corn, we want to get enough corn in Jamaica or in our country to make feed, for example, right? So say subsidized corn, or corn is subsidized, what will happen now is that the amount supplied on the market will increase. Will increase. Say it goes up to 4.8 dozen. Alright, so subsidy can cause an increase in supply. Alright, let us look at what can cause now. Let us look at cost of production. How that can cause the curve to go up, to increase and decrease. Alright, cost of production. If cost of production is low, so if producers can get inputs cheap or at a low cost, then basically they will be able to produce more goods on the market because they don't need a lot of money to purchase inputs. So they will buy more inputs and therefore produce more and able to supply more on the market. If cost of production is very high, then what will happen? You'll have a decrease in supply because if the cost for inputs are high, then producers will buy less input. And when they buy less input, they will produce less. And that will cause the curve to go left, to go this way. So let's note, label it S2. As I said, if cost of our inputs is high, then the curve will shift to the left, which is a decrease in supply of goods. So let us check to show that there is actually a decrease when the curve shifts to this way, a decrease in supply. So let us go back to the original supply curve. So at $15, the suppliers were willing to supply about 2.9 dozen corns. If cost of production increase, say the increase came from abroad, you know that we import corn seeds, right, in the country. So if there's a tax, for example, on those goods, if there's an increase of tax, custom on those seeds, what will happen? Cost of production will go up for the producers, those persons who have to buy them and plant them. Say cost of production goes up, what will happen now? At the same price, the amount that will supply, as you can see, move to about 1.7 dozen. Alright, let us look at the other factor, technique of production. Of course, technique of production will have the same effect. Because what will happen is that if you find a cheap way to produce, an efficient way to produce, for example, the hydroponic system. So what will happen, you find a cheap way to produce more, then you can actually supply more on the market. But if you're going to rely on manual labor to water your crops, use the hose or use a bucket, you might not produce as much corns as our products as those using technology. So of course technology and technique can affect the supply curve. It can cause a shift in the supply curve. The summary of the lesson. Alright, number one, what is demand? Now, demand is the amount of goods that consumers will buy when according to price change. Okay, over a period of time. Now, remember that demand speaks about the buyer. Alright, number two, what is supply? Supply is the amount of goods that suppliers are willing to put on the market based on the selling price of the goods. Remember that supply is written from the perspective of the sellers. Number three, what is the demand schedule? Demand schedule is the total amount of demand for a good that is tabulated. So that information is put in a table that is called the demand schedule. And what is, number four, what is the demand curve? The demand curve is when you plot all those demands for a good on a graph. Alright, you get a line when you plot that line, and the line always runs in one particular direction. It always runs in this direction. Alright, so on this axis you have price, And on this axis you always have quantity. Alright, so the demand curve always run that way. Alright, and why I put those information in a table and on a graph is so you can analyze the market. What is the supply schedule? Now the supply schedule is putting all the supply of a good in a table according to how that supply is affected by price. You put all that information on a table, so that's supply schedule. Now number 6, what is the supply curve? The supply curve is when you plot all those information from the supply schedule of that one particular good on a graph. And now what will get, you'll get a line when you connect all the points. So the supply curve always run in this direction. Please note that price is always on this axis and quantity is always on that axis. Alright, number 7, what is the equilibrium price? Now the equilibrium price is that price at which the amount supply is equal to the amount demanded. So in that market, there is not an oversupply of the goods or undersupply of the goods. In other words, the buyers won't lose money and the sellers won't lose money. Everybody will be happy and comfortable making a profit, and the consumers will get in what they want. They're comfortable at that price. Alright, so that's the equilibrium price. 8 and last, what causes a shift in demand curve and supply curve? Now factors that can cause the demand curve to shift is, number 1, for the demand, the factors would be tax and income of the consumer. So if the income of the consumers increase, they will demand more goods. And what will happen? That will cause the demand curve to shift to the right. So let me show you that. Demand curve shift to the right. So you name the original demand curve D1 for the second one. Alright, so when you have an increase in demand, and this is not caused by a change in price, this is caused by a change in income or tax of the buyers. Alright, so when you have the curve moving to the left now, you have a decrease in demand. I will normally label that D2. Alright, so you have factors like tax, factors like income of consumers. So if consumers' income decrease, they purchase less goods, which cause the curve to move to the left. If their income increase, it moves to the right. If tax increase, the curve will move to the left because the consumers have less money to purchase goods. Alright, the supply curve, when the curve moves to the right, there's an increase in supply. When it moves to the left, there's a decrease in supply. But what are the factors that can cause a shift in the supply curve? One can be cost of production. If inputs are very cheap, then producers will buy more inputs. And then if they buy more inputs, they will be able to produce more goods or supply more goods on the market. On the other hand, if goods are very expensive, then they will buy less input and therefore are able to produce or supply less goods of that good on the market. Alright, so the supply curve is always written like that, label S. If it moves to the right, you have an increase in supply. If it moves to the left, you have a decrease in supply. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to our channel, please like, and please stay in tune for the multiple choice questions and answer session. Thank you.